Hi, it's Von Hertzog. I'd like to welcome you back to the Social Club, my analog digital hybrid studio. I know why you're here again. You want to know how to build these King RO4Y MKIII floor standers. Now, you saw my last video with the stand mount. If you didn't see the last video, here's a link to it. Go watch it first. It's almost 2 hours. I go through every step of how I build out the stand mount version of these speakers. That was 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years later, I'm back again with the floor standers. If this is one of your first times seeing my videos, welcome. I'm Von Hertzog. This is the Social Club. It's my analog digital hybrid studio where I perform mixes and masters for clients all over the world. I also build speakers here. I have a company called Fidelity, and we design and build high-end studio monitors and bookshelf speakers, or stand mount speakers, or floor standing speakers, depending on what you're into. So if you're into speaker building or studio engineering, come along, give me a like and subscribe, follow my channel. I'm sure I'm gonna have something relevant for you in the future, so come along, join the Social Club. Which reminds me, you can now join the Social Club here on YouTube. You can become a Social Club associate or a Social Club member. Come along, join the Social Club. I'm trying to build an online community here of people that care about sound quality and fidelity. So if you think you fall into that camp, join the Social Club. Join the conversation. Tell me what you'd like to see in a future video, and hopefully I can create something for you along those lines. Now, back to the video. Before we get started, I want to send a huge shout out and thank you to SEAS in Norway and Matasound here in the States. Adam at Matasound was kind enough to pass these passive radiators to me from SEAS. He shipped them to me free of charge, so I was able to get these things here and able to perform this build. Matasound did not sponsor this video. SEAS did not sponsor this video. Full disclosure, SEAS provided free passive radiators for this build, so I did not pay for them. However, they are not paying me anything. They are not asking me to say anything about this speaker, good or bad, nothing specific. They just want me to have the video out there on the internet, and that's what I'm doing for you guys. So while they did not pay me anything to create this video, I will ask you, if you're in the States and you do want to buy this kit or buy the passive radiators to expand your existing King RO4Ys, go to Matasound. They have the parts you need. They're really great people to work with, and I enjoy that store. So go to Matasound if you can. Whenever I'm designing speakers and building out crossovers, I'm always going to Matasound for my crossover parts. They carry clarity cap capacitors, which I love, and Mundorf resistors, and those are my go-tos when I'm building crossovers. So check out Matasound. If you're overseas, check out Sound Imports. So I know some of you are asking, why make this video? I raved about the stand mount version of these speakers. Why bother doing it again if I already had everything I need? If the last speaker played 20 to 20, what am I really gaining here? Well, there's still improvements that can be made. And I'm the kind of person that if I know I can improve something, I kind of wanna. You know, it's always in the back of my head, hey, this could be better, this could be better. All right, then let's make it better. Let's do it. Let's do it right now. And that's what we're gonna do. I mentioned in my previous video that they referenced this design in the notes. And if you want to make these things your main living room floor standing speakers, you can. If you extend the subchamber down another 50 centimeters and you add 2 passive radiators, these things turn into floor standing monsters. And I was curious, I'm not gonna lie. So I hit up SEAS in Norway and I was like, hey, tell me more about this King RO4Y floor stander thing. And they were kind enough to fill me in on what really changed. Not a whole lot. Going to passive radiators, going to a taller cabinet. By going to a larger cabinet with more space in the subchamber, we're already increasing the sensitivity of the speaker. So the sound quality is getting better because it takes less effort to reproduce the same notes when you have a bigger enclosure. So the bigger cabinets on their own would help. And I've thought about maybe doing a floor stander sealed versus passive radiator cabinet video. I have cabinets cut with no passive radiator holes inside. So I can do floor standers in a sealed cabinet. If that's something you want to see in a future video, let me know, because it is a lot of effort and I'm not going to go to that effort if no one cares about it. So if you do care and you'd like to see the passive radiator version of this versus the sealed version of this, leave me a note and tell me why you want to see it. And if enough people actually have interest, I'll go ahead and do it. Like I said, the cabinet's already cut for it. It's just a matter of putting it all together, building it out. But that takes a lot of time, and I don't want to put that effort in if no one really cares in the end. And I gotta be honest with you, I don't think I'd keep this as a sealed speaker. The passive radiators help too much. And let me explain why. The passive radiators project out the sides. Before, when I had the stand mount version of the speaker, I had a null in my room. Now, in the last build video I did for this, the null was at about 32 Hertz. This room has a natural null that comes at about 32 Hertz. I know it's there, there's not much I can do about it. I can't change the structure that I'm in. And bass notes that long, I can't really mitigate. So the only thing I could do when I was choosing where to sit in the room was I shifted the listening space to where that null was the least offensive. I pushed the speakers further into the room a little bit, which allowed me to get the null all the way down to 27 Hertz. What these allow me to do is pressurize the room differently. Like I said before, they were only shooting at you directly. So all the sub-frequencies were coming at me. When they were hitting the back wall and bouncing back, they were starting to cancel out at 27 Hertz. That's how a null works. But what I wanted was to fill that null in. And so what the passive radiators allowed me to do is tune the passive radiator to that null, which happens to be the resonant frequency of the sub, so it's already paired up perfectly. But it also is where I had the null in the room. So by adding these passive radiators in and having them now shoot out the sides while the sub shoots out the front, it pressurizes the room in a different way, and it gives me a much better sound that fills out that pothole that I had. Now, what does that mean for the sub frequencies? Right on the fringe of infrasonic, you know, 20 Hertz, 21 Hertz, 22 Hertz. It means they're gonna be a couple decibels down compared to how flat everything else is. However, you're still gonna be within F3 all the way down at 22 Hertz. So with an F3 at 22 Hertz, I'm gonna go ahead and say these things play full range. I am not going to be using these for home theater. I'm using these as my reference grade studio monitors here at the Social Club. So while I am working and performing my job, I need a speaker that's gonna play super clean all the way through. And while the sealed speaker did allow me to do that, it required a lot of extra DSP down at the bottom. And that increased group delay and, you know, it did a couple things for me that I wasn't entirely keen on. The initial stand mount build that I did 2.5 years ago, that was to show you how you could build at home a fully high-end hi-fi system where it had the DAC, the amp, the speakers all included in one box. Super easy, right? They also designed a very easy to build speaker cabinet, very easy cuts, you know, similar size panels. It's pretty easy, you know, as far as speaker builds go, you can do it. I'm not a woodworker and I did it. Luckily this time around, I have Vince to handle all my woodworking, so, you know, I don't have to get quite as dirty. Don't get me wrong, I'm standing there in sawdust with him, so I'm still getting filthy. But I don't have to get my hands dirty in the same way because he's good at woodworking, I am not. So just by adding the extra space to the cabinet, we're already improving the speaker sensitivity. And then we add a window brace halfway down that subchamber to help reinforce the sidewalls to keep everything nice and tight. And since the larger cabinet helps the sub's sensitivity, we don't have to ask the DSP to do as much heavy lifting. So even if we forget the passive radiators and we just take the existing cabinet and extend it to this floor standard size, we're already improving the speaker by improving the sub sensitivity and having the DSP do less heavy lifting. But by adding passive radiators on either side of the cabinet, we're actually relieving a lot of the internal cabinet pressure by providing an outlet in the form of a tuned passive radiator. And you'll be able to see from the waterfall plots that the passive radiators actually end up having a cleaner waterfall plot than the sealed speakers with the extra DSP applied. And the room null I had was really causing a lot of group delay that I couldn't get around because things were canceling each other out, so they weren't hitting my ear properly. So the speaker itself gets upgrades just by going to the new cabinet design. And some of the existing stand mount cabinet resonances that still existed got cleaned up by relieving the pressure on the sidewalls by adding the passive radiators. So we're ending up with a better, more inert cabinet by adding the passive radiators to it than trying to keep those very strong sub-frequencies sealed in a box. And see, the lowest octave in music is the hardest to reproduce. A0 on a piano is 27.5 Hertz. And unfortunately for me, that's exactly where the null was in my room, 27 Hertz. So to have someone on a piano hit an A0 key, it's coming in 6 decibels softer in my room than it would if it was flat. And I don't like that. It's a very unfortunate null. Now, granted, if you're gonna have a null, I'd much rather have it at 27.5 Hertz than having it at like 200. But ideally, no nulls are best, right? And the DSP can only do so much to fix a null. Because let's think about it, it's physics. If I have the stand mount version there and it's projecting sub notes at me, and some of the notes are wrapping around the back, hitting that back wall, and then coming back at me, but by the time the back wall wave and the subwoofer wave hit my ear, they're out of phase at 27 Hertz. So I can boost that DSP as much as I want. It's not going to make that 27 Hertz audible, any more audible, because it just means that as I turn it up more, a bigger wave's hitting the back wall, a bigger wave is hitting me from the front, and when they still cancel out at the same spot, I'm still not getting that 27 Hertz. So the DSP cannot fix my pothole there. What can is going to the passive radiators and placing them on the side walls. Because now I'm not only pressurizing the room through the front subwoofer, the passive radiators on the side are pressurizing at the frequency that my null is occurring at. And by putting them out that way, it affects the room differently and it fills in that hole. Now the trade-off is the absolute lowest notes, 21, 22, 23, they're rolled off a little bit. For instance, 24 Hertz is still flat. You know, 22 Hertz, you're 3 decibels down. I'm going to go ahead and call that full range because it is. And while the old speaker might have been able to get that 21 Hertz note, the stand mount and the sealed, the amount of DSP that I had to add to it to get it there and to try and get it past that null, you know, you're playing past the speaker's resonant frequency at that point. And that's when it can start to play out of control. Now, being in a sealed cabinet, you have that air spring back there, which is helping, which is cool. The DSP isn't going to help you with a physics problem in your room. Redirecting the sound waves different directions, that can help you because now you're pressurizing the room differently. And that's what I did here. And it's made all the difference in the world for cleaning up that low end. In these speakers, the sub crosses over at 210 Hertz, which means everything under 210 is being pushed out by the subwoofer. So if everything under 200 is only coming at you front facing, and you end up with that null in the room, you kind of have to go to a different direction to get them to even out. You have to remember, bass is omnidirectional. It doesn't have to aim directly at you. It comes from around because the frequency wavelengths are so long. You can't pinpoint it. But for me, that's fine. I would much rather have 27 Hertz audible than 21 Hertz, which is pretty much rumble and non-musical. When you're on that fringe of hearing, you're more likely to feel the note than you are to hear it. I'm just saying. And let's be real, I don't need infrasonics. I don't need anything under 20. I am doing music here. So what did we change about the cabinets this time around? Well, we decided to make some changes. The first and biggest change we made is we took the amps out of the speaker cabinets. Sure, it's nice to have an active speaker where everything's all self-contained, but I like the idea of being able to swap out amps. Like, I have the 253s. Maybe I want to go to the 503. You know what I mean? I can place it further away so I don't hear the fan. I don't want to have to create an entirely new speaker cabinet for that speaker. So we moved them out into an external amp rack. Now, that amp rack is going to be the topic of an upcoming video. For now, what I did was I just placed the amps back in the old stand mount cabinets and I put 2 Nutric SpeakOn connectors underneath, one for the coax, one for the subwoofer. And I'm able to take those and run them to the speakers. So eventually they will have a more elegant solution. It will be a nicely designed amp rack that I'm still tweaking the design on, which is why it wasn't ready for this video. There's a couple things that I'm still kind of tweaking. I want to get just right. So I wanted to get this video out. I didn't want the amp rack to be what was holding this thing up anymore. So we're going to do that come spring. You know, maybe May or June, we'll get the video up for the amp rack, okay? So that's a big change, getting rid of the internal amps and putting them out into an external enclosure. But by doing so, that means that we will need speaker cables that we didn't need before because everything was internal. So I'm going to show you how to build SpeakOn cables. I'm sure a lot of you guys are still using positive and negative wires, you know, banana clips, whatever. That's fine. I mean, that's how things have been done for a very long time. But improvements have been made. And SpeakOn connectors are fantastic. Twist and click, easy. And being able to just twist and click with a coax, 4 conductors all in one cable, twist, click, done, fantastic. Amphion and Ex Machina have gone to these connections for a lot of their internal speaker stuff. They help simplify things a lot. And I'm going to show you how to build those SpeakOn cables. We're going to be using Mogami 12 gauge, oxygen-free copper, very high-end cables. We're going to be cutting them to the length that we need them. I'm going to show you how to wire them into the SpeakOn connectors. It's going to be easy, so come along for that too. And when we get the amp rack ready, I'm going to show you how we incorporated OLED screens and a remote control to be able to control these speakers, the presets, the volume level, fantastic stuff. But getting the amps out of the cabinet did a couple things for us. One, it let us simplify the design because we're not building in the amp chamber anymore. So it made it much easier. Also, it gave us a little bit extra space for both speaker chambers. The coax chamber and the subwoofer chamber have a little bit extra space in them. And it just helps. They're not in quite as cramped of a space anymore. And last but not least, it helped get the amplifiers away from the inner cabinet vibrations. Now, do those inner cabinet vibrations make a difference for the amplifier? Depends who you ask. I think it's just a safer bet to get them out of the vibrations altogether. And having the option of swapping amplifiers, maybe going from the 253 to the 503, that's pretty awesome. But I could also do a whole other shift. I could take ICE power modules and take mini DSP and maybe use mini DSP as my correction instead of the Hypex filter designer software. So I like the idea of having the cabinets be more like a passive cabinet and then running them out to the active amplifier. Another change we went with this time around, and I'm very grateful for this one, is what we did for lining the inside of the cabinets. If you watched the last video, I did the butyl rubber deadening, sound deadening that I applied to all the internal things, which adds weight, mass, and dampening to the cabinets so they're even more inert. And then I used like a wool felt that I had gotten from Matasound that was part of their accessories kit. And I stapled or glued that in to the various places inside the cabinet to help smooth out any internal cabinet resonances. This time it got easier. Sonic Barrier, you know, you can pick this stuff up at Parts Express. Sonic Barrier has a new butyl rubber and 1-inch denim combo pack that is fantastic. It's a pound of sound deadening per square foot and 1-inch denim wool that is peel and stick easy. Just peel the bag off, stick it right on, perfect. I'm gonna show you how we perfectly cut these for each of the panels so that when we roll it up, we have nice tight seams inside and everything is protected. The Hypex amplifiers, the Fusion amps, they have gone through a recent firmware upgrade, which now allows the opportunity to incorporate FIR filters. I'm using all IIR filters, and going to FIR filters can really improve some things as far as phase goes. But the more I looked into it, the more I realized it was going to create a real delay. There's a latency to it, and I don't want latency in my speaker, especially when I'm like editing video. I need to know that the mouth lines up with the speech, right? So I can't really be using a high latency speaker. What I did instead is I went to all pass filters, which allow you to pass all the frequencies through, but only shift the phase. And by doing that, I was able to get the phase hands off from the tweeter to the mid-range and the coaxial perfectly in phase. And then it also hands off from the mid-range to the subwoofer in phase. You'll see later in my response, I do have a phase wrap point, and that ends up happening because of my desk and my monitor. I have objects in front of me because I am working. This is not my leisurely setup where I can set the speakers and have nothing in front of me. If that's your setup, awesome. You won't run into that same problem. You can stay in phase the whole way. But being that I have a desk and objects in front of me that are rotating the phase, I'm kind of stuck there. But having the all pass filters handle the phase so beautifully, it is so crystal clear now. Like before I said these things were like, you know, holographic. Even more so now. You know, it sucks when you run out of words, right? But I'm kind of running out of words. And the all pass filters thing isn't something that's dependent on the floor standards. It's just dependent on the firmware of the Fusion amp you have. So even if you have the stand mount version, you can use all pass filters to help clean up your phase, or go to FIR filters if latency isn't an issue for you. But for me personally, I stuck with the IIR filters and the all pass filter as It gave me what I needed, and to the point that the benefits outweighed the detriments. Because the biggest detriment to me of FIR filters is the latency, and I don't want to deal with that at all. So that's pretty much what we've changed this time around. We changed the cabinet a little bit, we changed where the amplifiers live, and I changed the how I rotate the phase in the amplifiers. All of that made for a better speaker. So come along as I walk you through each step of how we went along doing it this time, where we went to the taller cabinets, where we went to the different interior lining. I saved myself some time by finding the butyl rubber and the denim as one material that I can peel and stick. Saved me a ton of time doing that. So this is what I recommend. Come along, watch this video, and when you're done, build these things out. Build them out. Do you already have the stand mount version of these? Well, start clearing some space on your floor because you're going to want to add the floor standing version. And you can just take those speakers out of the old cabinets, plop them into the new ones, you're good to go. Now you do have to adjust the low end DSP going from the stand mount to the floor standers because obviously the sensitivity increases, a lot of things change. So you're not going to need as much DSP on the low end as you did for the stand mount version. All in all, these speakers are phenomenal. I love them. I just love listening to them. I'll come down here, and even if I'm doing work that isn't music related, like say I'm not engineering, say I'm doing some website work or something, I'll just put these things on to listen to because music I love sounds so amazing coming through these things that I just want to experience it all the time. You know, it adds something amazing to me that I love. So that's pretty much it. The main things we're changing is, you know, we're getting the amps out of the cabinets. We're going to the more simpler design inside the cabinet. We won't need the internal amp chamber. And, you know, we're adding a window brace halfway down the sub chamber now because it's taller and we want that reinforcement in there. I hope you enjoy these speakers as much as I have. I think they're absolutely amazing and phenomenal. I don't have 2 or 3 sets of speakers up here anymore. I have this is it. They're my only ones. You know, I was without these speakers for a little while because I had some health issues and I had taken these speakers apart to transfer to the new cabinets, but I ended up having a lot of back and neck pain to where I was at the spine doctor every month for the last 6 months. I'm on muscle relaxers. I'm on things because my body is starting to betray me. And that sucks, you know, like in May, I'm going to turn 47. I don't think I'm insanely old, but I know I can't do what I did 10 years ago, and I definitely can't do what I did 20 years ago. You know, I guess that's part of being a human, is starting to recognize and understand that your body will fail you over time. It's just the way of the world. And unfortunately, mine started going. I am tall. I'm between 6'3" and 6'4". That's a lot of skeleton to hold up. And sometimes my neck and my back muscles get tired or strained. You want to know what really set this off for me? Last April, I was picking up the stand mount version of the King RO4Ys, which I think are about 65 pounds in the box. And I'm an idiot, you know? I picked it up and I twisted at the waist. Didn't move my legs, didn't move my feet, didn't lift properly. Just picked it up with my arms and twisted with my back. And my low back said, no, no, no. My back matumboed me. And that was pretty much it. Like, I was down and out. And that was last April. And I thought I was doing better and things were good. And then September, I woke up one morning doing my little stretching in bed. I went like that and my neck went pop, pop, pop. And I said, ooh, hope that was a good pop. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. It was a really bad pop. And I went into intense pain. And what that ended up doing was my C5, C6 here, I have a little arthritis in there, and I had a bulging disc, and that disc was pressing on the nerve, and that nerve was sending shots down through this arm to the point that my arm was just twitching and atrophying. And I couldn't get in to see the spinal doctor for a month. So for that first month, I had no medicine and no help. So this arm was just atrophying because it was constantly firing. I had intense weakness in it. So I went through 6 months of Strive physical therapy, and they got me back on point and they got me back up and running to where I was able to start 2026 feeling better and not having quite as much pain. Don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of pain, but it's manageable now. And it allowed me to finish the video and get everything done. So I'm grateful for that. That's also led me to some harsh realizations that I'm going to have to confront. And one of them is I'm going to have to change the business model for Inclined Fidelity. If you follow Inclined Fidelity, it is my own personal speaker company that I have with my buddy Vince in Connecticut. He does all the woodworking. I do the electronics and speaker portion and the tuning. And we design and build our own speakers. And it's worked out great for us. But my back is betraying me. And I don't have the energy or the physical ability at this point to churn out as many speakers as I need to. So we are going to be shifting the business model to offering DIY kits to where you can build these speakers at home. And if you buy a kit, you'll be able to watch a video of me putting that kit together so you know what you're doing. I'm trying to make it as easy as I can for people. Because at the end of the day, the important part is the speaker and the music coming out of it. And if you can do that at home, do it. I don't care if I built the speaker or you built the speaker, as long as the speaker sounds good, right? So we're going to start offering kits. We're going to offer pre-cut wood for these King RO4Ys, both the stand mount and the floor mount. Now, the kits we're offering don't have the internal amplifiers built in. We have them broken out into the amp racks. So if you're considering, just know that the amps will not be mounted into the speaker cabinets, okay? But if that's not a deal breaker for you, if you don't mind having the amps external, buy the flat pack of the wood, ship them to you, assemble it yourself. You can watch the video to see how we did it. Easy peasy. Now, in this video, I'm not going to go through wiring up every speaker like I did in the original video, because none of the wiring changes, okay? How to set up the DSP, that stuff doesn't change. You'll have to adjust the DSP on the low end, but how you do it doesn't change. And I'm not going to rehash an hour of the old video in this video. You can go back to that video if you need to know how certain steps are done. This is just to show you what the upgrade is, okay? So if you're still interested in Inclined Fidelity monitors, head on over to the website. It's going to look a little different. We're offering kits now instead of building them all out made to order. As nice as that was, building them out made to order, like I said, my body is betraying me and it's just not as easy as it once was. So I would rather shift that responsibility onto you. You'll still have everything you need, but I won't have to break my back doing it. So I want to thank you for coming along today. I want to thank you for coming to the Social Club. Thanks for watching my videos. Thank you for liking and subscribing. It goes an incredibly long way. The last video did really well for me. I think I'm at about 130,000 views on the stand mount version of these. Ralph's waking up. Ralph's over here sleepy. Oh, such a sleepy puppy. Such a sleepy puppy. He's a good boy though. So let's do it. Let's jump into this. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about these speakers and you can tell me what you think. We'll loop around again at the end and I'll give you my thoughts after everything's finished, okay? Let's get to it. All right, being that we're going to be using a passive radiator in this build, we should talk about how they work. Typically, when you have a speaker, this is what the speaker outside of a box looks like. You have the speaker cone, you have the dust cap, you have the surround, you have the basket. What attaches to the basket is the motor structure. The motor structure consists of this magnet, and then if you look inside the cone, you see when you push it up and down, inside there, that cylinder is the voice coil. The voice coil is what you energize when you power the speaker. So when you push AC current through these positive and negative terminals, what that ends up doing is energizing the voice coil and telling it how to interact with the magnetic field of the magnet. And that pushes the speaker back and forth. That's the push and pull you get. The more amplifier power you give it, the more extreme the reaction. A passive radiator, though, is a little bit different. Let me show you how. It's a lot like a speaker, only there's no motor structure. You still get the same cone, dust cap, surround, basket, but it really changes in the back. There's no voice coil on this, connected to the spider. Here, the cone connects directly to the spider, as you can see. And on the back of the spider, you have a bolt here. And what you can do is you can add weighted discs. 1 disc, 2 disc, 3 disc. 1, 2, 3, 4 all together. However many discs you need, you weight it here and that pulls the tuning frequency down, which means it requires more pressure from a lower frequency to begin to vibrate and resonate. How you tune the passive radiator determines at what frequency it starts reacting and turning on. The lower the tuning, the lower the activation point. So even though you have things that are essentially the same, by keeping the motor structure off and keeping this passive, you're allowing all of the music to still be dictated by the actual subwoofer. The passive radiators are simply assisting the subwoofer on the very lows at whatever point you tune it to help fill out that bottom end, fill out that pothole, you know, and fill in that frequency response so it's nice and level. Now, something you need to remember, X-Max. If you're dealing with a subwoofer like this, and it has a very big X-Max, like 14 in either direction, so 28 millimeters of linear travel. That's a pretty big X-Max, right? If this follows the same X-Max, I will need 2 passive radiators per sub. So instead of being 14 either way like the sub, say this was 28 either way, for a total of 56 front and back, then you'd only need 1 of these. So the X-Max will determine the number of passive radiators you need. Since we're using the exact same speaker structure, the same surround, cone, everything, you're going to need 2 of them because the X-Max is going to be identical on the sub to the passive radiator. So we're using 2. Now 2 also helps us by being able to put them on the side walls. By putting the passive radiators on the side wall, we're improving the cabinet over the sealed because the sealed cabinet requires the subwoofer to try and keep all of those low frequencies sealed inside the box, which causes a lot of reverberation and box resonances because the box is vibrating, trying to stay sturdy. By putting the passive radiators on either side of the cabinet, that's relieving a lot of pressure on the sidewalls, which is allowing the cabinet to remain more inert while sending the properly tuned frequencies out the sides. So instead of having those frequencies jammed in that sealed box and trying to control them in there, we're allowing the passive radiators to let some of that pressure out, support the frequency structure, sound even better down low, and do it nice and tight. We're not looking for a big flabby overhang here. We're not trying to tune these things to an area they don't belong. We just want to help support the subwoofer by adding the passive radiators, and that's what this build is doing for us. So another advantage is, if you have a sealed box, the problem you run into there is all of those sub-frequencies with the very large wavelengths are being jammed against that wall. Ralph is walking. One of the problems when you have a sealed box is all of those very low sub-frequencies, which are very low, you know, down in your 20s, they are pushing very hard against the internal walls of that box because the pressure has nowhere to go. The box itself is containing the sound pressure waves. But what that results in is vibrations because the box is doing its best to stay inert, but it's vibrating a little. By putting the passive radiators on the sides of the cabinets, we are giving the cabinet less vibrations because it's not working its hardest to keep it all contained. We're giving it a tuned outlet, and those tuned outlets are providing very clean, usable bass. The bass overall sounds cleaner, and it's because we're asking the DSP to do less. The DSP doesn't have to do as much of a makeup as it would in a sealed box. The sealed box requires that makeup because you're pushing the sensitivity down on it. By going to the larger box, our sensitivity increases, but we're also providing it a way for the sound frequencies to escape the sides in a tuned way, which also relieves cabinet pressure. These things get better all the way around by going to passive radiators. So now that we know that, let's go back and finish building these things out. I want to listen to them. All right, we got all the wood cut up in Connecticut. I brought it back here to the Social Club, and now I'm gonna show you how we're gonna roll this cabinet up in a dry fit. So we're gonna do it without glue, but I'm gonna show you how everything fits together. And it should be snug enough to hold itself together without the glue. So we have our 4 panels laid out. We have our 2 side panels where the holes are cut for the passive radiators. We have our front panel, which has our mid-range and our subwoofer hole. And then we have our back panel, which just has 2 holes cut for the Nutric SpeakOn D terminals that are going to go through those holes. And we have a top and a bottom, and we have our 2 braces, one of them being solid, the other one being grid pattern. The solid one will divide the mid-range from the subwoofer. In the first video I did with the regular size King RO4Ys, I had a couple of people comment that you need a divider between the subwoofer and the mid-range. And I guess they missed that part of the video because there was a divider in there. You need a solid divider to keep the sub vibrations separate from the mid-range vibrations, because the sub vibrations are going to overpower the mid-range, and we can't have that. So they need the separate cabinets. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put our braces in. I'll start with the brace in the lower cabinet. This has holes cut through it because we want all the air to be one chamber for the subwoofer. So we need the air to be able to pass through there. And that's what these holes allow. We'll put the other one up here. There we go. Now we can start to roll these up and groove the braces into the side pieces. There we go. Nice and in there. Now we get the second one, we gotta line it up, groove it up. Beautiful, look at that snapping together, right? Then we have this piece, we'll put on top, line it up. I feel that side piece came out. All right. We will put this down for the bottom and we'll stand this thing up. So let me actually kind of spin it this way. And we'll drop this in the top. And there you have it. We put the passives on the side because they actually help relieve cabinet vibrations on the sidewalls. So it's fantastic. It really helps remove the vibrations that the cabinet ends up feeling because this works like a pressure release. And this is the dry fit. This is how you snap it all together. I want to talk to you about the holes for the SpeakOn connectors. Here are the SpeakOn connectors, as I had showed you before. They're very small. Now, it says that you're supposed to use a 15/16 bit to drill these holes. And I did that. And it left just a hair too much. It tore out just a little bit too much to where I could see a little bit of it over the lip. And we don't want that. We want a tight seal for these because they're going in the cabinet. So here comes another part of this that I should bring up. These things. See this little thing? It's a little rubber gasket that's built to fit around here to make a airtight fit for if you're going to seal it against a cabinet. So I will be using the gaskets around the D-ring terminals when they're being used in cabinets. In the amp rack, I'm not going to use it. But essentially, this is how they fit in then. So as you can see, fits in nicely in the back, easy access to your tabs, so you have everything you need. And it's pretty straightforward. So that is how we do the Nutric D terminals, easy peasy. So I'm super excited. I want to get these cabinets finished so that I can actually get the speakers installed and listen. I'm dying over here. But one more thing.
Oh, one more thing. Gee, I almost forgot.
That's enough, Columbo.
In the last video, you might recall, I used a butyl rubber that I applied to the cabinets to help sound deaden them. And then I also put a wool felt inside. I'm doing something a little different this time. I'm trying to kill two birds with one stone. And here's what I'm doing. I went to Parts Express and I grabbed this. This is their roll of sound deadening material. It's a blue denim, kind of like fabric, but on the back of it is the rubber. And to make it even easier, it's peel and stick. Oh, thank God. Because I'm not gonna lie, it was a pain to do it the other way, where you're like heat gunning and rolling all this stuff on, and then you have to, like, you know, staple or glue in the felt. It wasn't my favorite thing. This is gonna simplify it a lot, and I hope it does the job. So it's a nice, thick but soft kind of blue denim fabric, and then there is a rubber on the back that I can just peel and stick. So we'll talk about that next. Because when you have one of these panels, right, you can see, you know, you're gonna need cutouts in certain areas. So what we need to do is we need to calculate the size that these cuts need to be to fit on here, so that when we roll it all together, they're not overlapping each other and causing us to not get a good fit. Because the other thing I want to do is I would like to get these cut and applied before we roll the cabinets together. Because last time I was, you know, I could put the butyl rubber on before I rolled it up, but I did the felt afterwards, and I don't think I'd do that again, just because it was more difficult to try and get in there and either staple it or glue it. It was a mess. So this is gonna make it easier. And we will have to figure out how much of a border to leave so that when they roll up, they fit nicely next to each other, but they don't overlap and cram to the point that it would be pushing against the wood. So I guess let's do that next. Let's get this stuff cut up and applied to the boards so that when we roll it, it works out nice. All right, so now that I have the other cabinet panels laid out here, what we're going to do is we are going to get this stuff measured and applied to the appropriate chambers. So, whoa, let's get this stuff cut up. I just bipped a neon. 6-7. All right, here we go. Here's what we can do. The front and back panels, we can go flush to the sides or just a little bit in from the sides, right? But then on these panels, the side panels, we're gonna have to pull in 1 inch on either side so that when it rolls up, it fits nicely. So we get my ruler here, and we can figure out what this size is here. It's about 10 3/4. So let's cut it to, we'll go 10 3/8. We're gonna cut it to for this section in here, okay? Got my shears. Let's measure this out. Well, that doesn't cut too well. Let's see if the titanium cuts any better. I thought these shears would work, but maybe I need something sharper. Titanium. Titanium for the win. So the titanium works much better than these stainless steel shears. All right, cutting this stuff is not easy. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Am I supposed to use a razor? Like, I don't know what they want me to cut this with because it is not cutting nicely. I almost wanna get a kitchen knife at this point. Stuff doesn't wanna cut. Jeez Louise, that was not easy. But we got it cut. Let's see how it fits. Something tells me it's not gonna be, it's gonna be long here. So let's trim up where we have to. Also, it seems to come with like this lip on the outside that I'm gonna need to cut off. That part looks good, but this part needs trimming at the top. It's not straight across. What I wanna do now is flip this around so that I can see it easier. All right, I think I'm ready to stick this down. I feel secure enough in my refinements and measurements that this will stick here nicely. I need to draw a circle in the back of this thing so I know where to cut out the hole. So before I peel the tape off, I'm going to get a pencil here. Hopefully a pencil will work. Holding this into place because it looks like it's lined up nicely, I'm going to go down to the hole underneath and I'm going to draw a circle so I know what I need to cut. Ah, see that? Worked. So before I can stick this now, because why not have everything be complicated, I am going to have to cut a hole into this. So let me regroup. All right, we're gonna try this. We're gonna just cut the hole in with a blade and see how it works. Here we go. All right. So now, when I put this back here, and we go to line this up, boom, I can see through it now. Success. All right, I think we're good. I think we're in good shape here to where that will come through nicely. All right. Here we go. Here we are, we're committing. All right, that part done. Now, I'm not gonna make you watch this, but I'm gonna repeat this for the other parts. And that's how we're gonna do it. So I showed you how to do this one. I'm sure you get the drift, right? You guys are quick. So imagine I repeat that for these, or maybe I'll just blink and show you and it'll be done. All right, I just want to show you real quick what I meant by leaving space here for the fold up. So we measured the front panel and the back panel all the way to the edges. And that means we need to leave a little bit of a space on the side panels so that when they roll up against them, see how that is? Now it goes flush and they're nice and smooth there. And they're not bumping into each other. They each have clearance because we don't want this to get in the way of the glue and roll up. So we want to make sure that this has enough space here that it's not going to impede the integrity of the cabinet. And it's doing great. So again, I'm not going to make you watch all of this, but I wanted to show you how it should roll up so you see how that works. One other thing I want to point out here quick is I figured out a better way to cut this. The best way to cut it is to measure on the paper the lines you want. Then with a cutting mat underneath, take a utility knife or a razor or an X-Acto or whatever you're using, but I'm using a utility knife and just cutting through with a ruler to get straight lines. I found that's much easier than trying to use scissors. Don't use scissors. This is what I'm using. Ruler, knife, and I'm getting much better, cleaner cuts. And then when you're done, when you bring it back up, if you have any little pieces like this that you need, you can just use your scissors to make a little haircut. Trim that off, and now you're nice and neat. So that's how I do it. That's how I am doing it. That's how you should probably do it. This stuff, measure out, ruler, pencil, scissors. No. Utility knife. Let's fix this one down, and then we will swap it to the other side and show how they roll up. Let's peel this stuff off. This part isn't fun either. Peeling this stuff is not the best time. Although I say that, and this one goes nice and clean. Wow. Clean release. All right, let's get it placed. Push this back before we push it down. And so you want a good adhesion of the adhesive. So pound it down so it's nice and good, right? All right, now slide these down. Slide this one on the other side, right? And now, when we roll these up, they should fit beautifully together. Look at this. See that?
See how beautiful that looks? That's what we're going for. So that's the tight fit that we're going for the whole way around the cabinet. And now you don't have to watch anymore. You get the idea. I'm gonna blink and they'll be finished. All right, so I'm halfway done. I have the first cabinet laid all the way out, and this is the one that we're gonna roll up on video here. But I do have to go back and do the other one off camera. But I wanted to show you what difference this makes. So in the meantime, versus, hear how much more dead that sounds? So again, for reference, a little more hollow, a little more dense. So this is providing the kind of sound dampening that we want, and you can tell by how it resonates when you knock on it. So I'm gonna go back and finish the second cabinet, and then I'm gonna come back and roll this up on video for you so you see how it's done. Okay, so believe it or not, it has actually been 2+ months since I last laid these here, and nothing has happened. That's because I ran into neck and spine issues. I was running into a problem where I had a bulging disc in my neck and tendonitis in the SI joint down in my hip. I was a mess. Could not do anything physically except for physical therapy and recovery. So I'm 90% recovered. I'm definitely good enough to get the video back. So let's get back to it, okay? Sorry this thing has taken so long. That was never my goal, but here we are. Life gets in the way. So here's what we're gonna be doing. We're gonna flip these over, we're gonna get the frog tape on the joints, and then we're gonna start putting the Gorilla Glue on. I got Gorilla Glue Ultimate because it has 15 minutes of working time, and this is a large cabinet. So to get glue in all the different seams, I need that little bit of extra work time before the glue starts curing and drying. So when we roll this up, we have a little extra leeway. Let's get into it. Get these things lined up nice. And this one, yeah. These panels are heavy, especially once you add the rubber and denim material. All right, you want a nice tight seam. We want to make sure that we have these at the same level so that it's going to stand nice and flat and level. And then you really have to just worry about making sure you keep your seams tight the whole way up and that the tape holds it together nicely. So we'll start on this one. I'll show you how we do this. All right, nice tight seam there, very tight. That's what we want for a nice clean roll up. Just to aid across the bottoms here, put some horizontal tape as well. This little, 3/4 of an inch on either side pulls off easily. So this helps reinforce keeping the tape down as well. I think we're doing good here. It's not a race. You don't have to rush through this. Take your time. Make sure you have the tape exactly where you want it. And you'll be in great shape. And we use frog tape because it pulls up nicely from the MDF. You can't use duct tape. That's going to pull the finish right off, like the top layer of MDF off. And I found the blue 3M painter's tape doesn't stick well enough. It doesn't stick well enough to hold heavy wood. So green frog tape has been my go-to after some trial and error. Some of you might be saying, hey, that's overkill to do all these extra bits. It's not. Again, trial and error. I've figured this out over time. If you don't do this, it don't roll up nice. I'm doing what I found has worked. All right, I think these are taped up. Now what we want to do is reseal these things, make sure they're nice and tight, and then we're gonna pick the cabinet up, flip it over. I think what we have to do is stand it up. I don't think I can fold it this way, so I think stand it back onto here. Okay. Hey. So now you can see what this cabinet looks like. Fold it up. Let's get it up here so that we can unfold it. So now we have it. All right. That went a little differently than I had planned, but it worked. All right, now we're gonna glue it up. Gorilla Glue Ultimate with that 15-minute work time. I have my brush, which we're going to use. This is how I'm gonna help get it in all the areas we need it to be. First things first, I'm going to start with the braces. They go in first. Here we go. I'm gonna take this brace, and this brace is gonna go right in here. So we'll move this front a little bit. There we go. All right. Get it on here, right? Get it in here. Use the brush. Boop, 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 boop. We just want to make sure that the glue has a nice amount, that it covers the surfaces nicely, so that when we drop it in, we know we're going to get a good adhesion, right? Like that. And so without further ado, I'm going to drop it right in. That needs to slide this way. Just trying to line it up in here. And now we're gonna go around it. Make sure we get the glue in here. And sometimes you'll get these end pieces that are very thirsty and they soak the glue right up. Just make sure they have enough. And it doesn't have to get every last millimeter or nanometer or whatever. You just have to make sure that there's space there and that the joint it's going into is well glued as well. All right, so those are done there. We'll come down here and do these now. Getting these channels. See why we needed that 15-minute work time? A lot to do here before you can get it rolled in. Getting it in there good. All right. Now we're gonna go ahead and take this guy, get some glue on him here. Then we're gonna drop him in. And again, you want the solid brace up here to divide the mid-range chamber so it's not getting the same air vibrations as the sub. You want the sub cabinet part to be its own sealed cabinet. You want the mid-range coaxial to be in its own sealed cabinet. And then you drop this in. There we go. We're in. All right. Keep this glue coming. See, this top part already soaked most of this glue in. And it didn't happen everywhere, but like I said, those certain cuts are going to be extra thirsty. This is one of them. So now, get the other sides of this brace. There we go. All right. Nice and neat. Over here. And if you noticed, I did not put any glue yet on the back parts here. This is the last part I'm going to do because I keep leaning against it. So not smart to start with glue there. All right, that's all done. Now we're gonna start doing the long cabinet seams. So I'm gonna start up here. I'm gonna go down one side, and back down the other. And I get my brush, and here we go. So as you can see here, lots of glue to go around. We're gonna have a good seal on this. All right. I did get a little bit of the denim stuff into the glue down here, so I'm just gonna pull that out so that it doesn't affect how tight the cabinet seals up. There we go. All right, one side down. Down this side. And back down this side. Lots of glue, just like we want. All right, down this one now. Down one side, back down the other. All right. Got stuff on me, but it's not glue. Long cabinets. And now we'll do the outside. All right, lot to do here. Got this side yet. Time to start rolling this up. All right, here's where it gets tricky. Getting these lined in. So you kind of have to line them in from the top. Getting a workout here, beating the shit out of this thing. But we're getting a nice tight seal, which is what we want. So now what we really got to do is stand this thing up and start getting these braces around so we can really tighten it in. So here we go. Ugh. That's upside down. All right, I am hot and sweaty, but I did it. Now, to get this corner as tight as we can, we're going to start putting braces around. But before we can do that, we got to get this thing sitting on its bottom. So what I'm gonna do here is start to get this nice and glued, and then we're gonna rest it on top. I already did the glue on the inside of the cabinet, but we need the glue on this panel now. So here we go. Then the good news is, when you sit the cabinet on top of this, you don't really need to brace it, because guess what? This cabinet's heavy, and its own weight is enough to get a really tight seal on this unit here. So pick it up, flip it around, do these sides. And one across. All right, we got this thing nice and primed with glue, ready to drop this thing on it. So here's what we're gonna do. Slide this whole thing down. How's that? Drop this right here. We'll come drop this on top. All right. Perfect. All right, that is in there. Now, we need to get the braces around to make sure we can seal this last corner real tight. All right. 3. Sometimes these things pop off. Just gotta feed them back in. Just like that. Get it around. Get it around, get it around. Oh, nice and tight. All right. Get a few more of these around. Let's tighten this thing up. There we go. Beautiful. There we go. There. Dripping with sweat. It's a hot one. Where was I? Oh yeah, one last guy. We did it. Almost. We gotta drop the top. Let's get the top in there. All right, I am hot and sweated. But I think this rolled up nice. Real nice. Since I'm just dropping the top in and we're not clamping it, we are gonna put weight on it. So we're gonna put probably 20, maybe 30 pounds of weight on. It'll hold the top down nice and flat. You gotta be careful. You don't wanna apply too much weight and then it starts to push into the cabinet too far and leaves the lip. That's not what we want. All right, nice and coated. See? Now, there we go. Let me put some weights on. All right, that's perfect. Yep, we don't want anything else. 20 pounds is doing it just right. In case you're wondering, 20 pounds. Ay, 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 I gotta tell you, guys, it's serious. Actually, what I'm gonna do, I did this before. So what I'm doing now, I'm measuring 16 inches up because that's where the brace is. I don't need these at the moment. And just for good measure, we're gonna put some screws in there to make sure that the cabinet is extra tight. So we're gonna put some screws in here. Now, am I making more work for myself by doing this? Yes. Is it required? No. All right, I'm just gonna put some holes in here so that we can get the brace really sucked in. I'm using a bit that lets me sink the screw head into the wood so that I can putty over it before we paint, before we sand and paint. So we'll take this, we'll just put this one in quick. There we are, right? Nice and sunk. Beautiful, right into that brace. That's what we want. So I'm gonna drill a couple holes across here, yeah, a few holes, and then forgot you could play these things. Kind of out of tune. Put these in. There we go, nice. You can hear it sink. Hear that wood creak. There we go. Now, it's like a cinder block. And so we're gonna do the same thing around the sides here. I'm gonna measure to 16 and drill across. All right, I wanted to take this off the stand quick to show you. Look how tight this corner rolled up. Look how amazingly tight that is. Right? Same thing over here. In fact, we'll reveal. Look how nice and beautiful those seals roll up when you use the tape. So that's why that method works so nicely. The other thing is, look how nicely the pre-cut material rolled up. Look how nice and tight this is. So it worked out beautifully. So this is going to do the job great. I did it. Here they are. Look at these things. These are my new twin towers, you know what I mean? These things are huge. I'm very excited for them. I can't wait to get them loaded in and listened to. But first, next things we have to do is fill in the screw holes that we put in here with some putty, and then we will sand down the cabinets, and after we sand them down, we will paint them. After the paint dries, we will regroup back here and we will load the drivers in. So I'm not going to make you watch all of those processes. You saw it in the last video. If you're curious how I did it, go back and watch that video. I'm not going to make you watch it again, but we will regroup back here when it's time to load the drivers. So stay tuned. You may have already seen, I have opened up a store here on YouTube for the Social Club, where I'm selling things like t-shirts for VHXRR and Majestic Phoenix, two of the groups that I'm in, or I'm also selling speakers that you've seen me build for videos here on YouTube. So, what's available? Let's take a quick look at what's available now. These are the SEAS Reed paper bookshelf speakers that I built. You can dual amp these things if you want to bi-amp them. They are wired that way. The crossovers are inside the box. The high pass and low pass circuits are separate so that you can bi-amp them if you want. Or I have the jumpers in there that you don't have to. Just connect one amp signal to them and you're ready to go. So if you were interested in those speakers when you were watching that video, you can grab them for yourself now, the exact pair from the video. Look at these guys. These things are beautiful. Sanded down Duratex, passive radiator around the back. Beautiful speakers here. These are very similar to an Amphion 115. They're not exactly the same. There's no waveguide, but I'm using the aluminum magnesium tweeter and I'm using the aluminum woofer here, 150 millimeter woofer, fantastic. Passive radiator around the back with plenty of X-Max to be able to support it with only one passive radiator. These are good to go. But if those didn't do it for you, maybe this will. This is the big boy I built. This is what I built for the AI versus DIY video. These were mine. They're similar to an Amphion 215. No passive radiators around back this time because I ran out of budget. But these things sound phenomenal. You connect these things with a subwoofer, you're in business. An amazing three-way speaker. Nice crossover designs. If you want to know how these are built, you can go check out the video where I build them. Or you can buy them here and own them for yourself. And I even have the pair of speakers that AI designed and I had to approve upon because their design was kind of shit. But I made it better. Here they are. They sound great. If you want them, you can buy them. And we're going to be offering DIY flat pack kits of pre-cut wood for these King RO4Ys. So whether you want the stand mount or the floor mount, we'll sell you the flat pack of wood. So all you have to do is assemble it. No cutting required. So keep checking back to the store. Maybe we'll have something in there that you're interested in. And tell a friend. You know, tell a phone, tell a friend. Maybe tell them, check out the Social Club. They got nice speakers up there, one of a kind that you can buy for yourself. And shout out to the Permanent Record podcast, Brian and Sarah, shout out to them. Fantastic podcast. If you're into music, especially music from the 1980s, they do deep dives into a lot of Depeche Mode albums. And Rob and I have been featured on their podcast 3 or 4 times, talking with them about our work and our albums and stuff. Love Permanent Record Podcast, love Brian and Sarah, check them out. So stop by the Social Club store here on YouTube and pick something up for yourself. Get yourself a nice pair of speakers so you can listen back to my next video even clearer. And remember, if you want to build these King RO4Ys at home, start with the flat packs from us. Save yourself all the cutting work. It is a lot of effort, as you've probably seen in this video. So let us save you that effort. Pick up the flat packs already cut, ready to go. Now back to the video. All right, now it's time to make the cables that we talked about. So as you remember, since we're breaking the amps out of the cabinets to simplify the cabinet build and to get the amps further away from the vibrations of the subwoofer, we're gonna need cables to interconnect them, right? Because in the original design for the King RO4Y MKIIIs, you're simply passing the wires from the amplifier directly to the drivers. That's not gonna work anymore since we're removing the amps away from the speakers. So what we're going to do is create the interconnect wires to go from the amp to the speaker. Ice maker just dropped ice. So what we're doing is we're taking the connection from the amp to the speaker. And this is how we're gonna go about doing it. We know that we have 3 different outputs coming out of the amp, right? We have 2 channels for the coax and a channel for the subwoofer. But we're only going to use 2 connectors. For the coaxial one, we're going to be using a connector that has 4 points of contact. So let me show you what we're doing. These come in 3 different flavors: 2-pole, 4-pole, or 8-pole. The 8-pole is a slightly different size, and we're not using that at all, so don't worry about that for this. But for this, we are going to be using the 2-pole and the 4-pole versions. Let me explain why. The 2-pole version is going to operate the subwoofer, the positive and the negative. Those are the 2 poles. For the coaxial, we need a 4-conductor cable because you need the positive and negative for the tweeter, the positive and negative for the mid-range. So we need 4 wires going to that. And where the 2-pole connectors have 2 points on the back, 2 tabs to connect the wires to, the 4-pole connectors, while appearing identical, have 4 tabs on the back. So you can run 2 sets of positive and negative. So that's what we're gonna use on the coaxial. So what are we gonna use for the actual wiring? I have a treat. This is Mogami 12 gauge oxygen-free copper. We have a 2-conductor wire and we have a 4-conductor wire. 4-conductor is going to be for the coax, 2-conductor is going to be for the subwoofer. The first thing we're going to do is take this, which it's 10 feet, we're going to cut it in half, and it's going to give us our 2 5-foot cables to run the subwoofer. Now, you can make your cables however long you need them. I plan to put the amp case in between the 2 speakers, so 5 foot to each speaker is plenty for what I'm looking to do. We'll cut this in half so that we have our cable for the left and the right. We'll cut this in half so we have the cables for the left and the right. And then I'm going to show you how we're going to start wiring these things up with Nutrix SpeakOn connectors to make it easier. Makes it super easy. Easy peasy, right? So these are the parts that we're going to be using. Let's start with the subwoofer because that seems easier. Let's get through this wire, shall we? Titanium. So now that we have it cut, we have our 2 speaker cables, right? Here we go. Let's start with this 2-conductor cable here. First thing I'm going to have to do is take the razor blade and strip it down. So what you want to do here is you want to cut gently. You want to make sure that you're clearing enough of the sheath off, and then you want to cut gently so that you're not cutting through the wire on the inside. You just want to cut through the outside. Should be able to bend it back, see a little crease in it. And then that's going to be what you follow as you go around the entire thing. As you pull this off, there's a little fabric in there, and you have your two conductors, your red and your black, and these little extra plastic things that just hold the wires in place inside the sheath. We're going to trim those off. All right, now we have our wire here, right? Now you get your wire clippers, right? You're going to come through, find the proper gauge. For this, it's going to be 12. Trim through, pull it off, and there we go. And then I will give these a twist. Twist them up real good for you. Do the red. And then we just twist this one up the way we did the other one. I mean, it's murder on the fingers, but when I used to do car stereo installations, my fingers were always shredded. I always had cuts all over my fingers and everything from the sharp pieces behind the dashboards. And again, we're going into a 2-pole SpeakOn connector. That's what we're going to be connecting to, right? We're going to get the appropriate piece, which is, this is the 2 connector piece. We're going to open the bag up, dump the parts out, and let's look at what we got here. So we have our end piece that will screw on in the end. We have our tension system. We have the actual connectors where they go in here. You can see these GoPros are locked focus, so it's kind of difficult to know sometimes. And to tighten these screws down, you need a T8 bit. So that's what I'm going to be using, a T8. This one's marked positive, which means this one's negative. So let's get the wires lined up so that we can get them in the holes here. All right, let's try and get these lined in here. Get the black one in. Try and get this red one in. And then what you want to do is tighten down the torque screws. Which is supposed to hold the wire in. Let's see how we do here. All right, those seem to be in there. And then we snap in to the back of that, the tension relief, like that, right? So that holds nice and tight now. Take your front piece, and you're gonna, when you get back here, oh, slot it in perfectly. Usually you have to line it up, but that one just lined up. And you can bring these back up, get all these like little teeth inside this thing so you can get it up around to tighten. Up around. Now we can screw this back end on. That is not going anywhere. Super snug. Both ends done. We got our sub cable. All right, so we have our first cable fully wired up. Very sturdy, nothing's coming out. These things are ready to be used. So again, this is going to plug into the amp rack. This is going to plug into the subwoofer, and we're going to have power. It's beautiful. Let's do the 4-conductor one now. Now the 4-wire one, as you can see, I've already cleaned the sheath off on this, and you have 4 wires. And so we are going to take these 4 wires, we are going to wire them to the inputs of the SpeakOn connector. Let me show you here. And if you notice, where the 2-pole was brown, the 4-pole is green. And there are 4 holes in this one. There's various SpeakOn connectors that you can buy from different companies. Buy Nutric. Don't skimp out. You're not going to end up saving any money. Buy official Nutric SpeakOn stuff. You might think you're saving money, but you're going to create headaches down the way. So just do it right from the start. All right, here we go. We start, as always, by putting the back piece on so we can slide it back up and screw it on when we're done. And that means that the tension piece comes next. So these 2 pieces wait down here until we're ready for them. Next up will be to strip this wire so that we can get them into the appropriate holes, tighten them down, and we're in business. All right, So we have our 4 conductors. We have to twist up the wires so that we can get them to slide into the holes nice and cleanly. So we just twist them up real nice, shred my thumbs, like I used to be doing car audio. It's nice and shredded, but I can't work in gloves. I need to feel what I'm doing. Gloves don't help with that. So let's look at what we got here. We have 4 holes. We have 4 conductors. So all we have to do is line them up properly and tighten them down. So we have the red in there. Let's tighten the red down. Get that torque spit in. Tighten, 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 tighten. Nice and tight. Flip it over. Make sure we got that brown in there, nice and flush. Tighten it up. All right. So that's in there nice and tight. Now we only have 2 more to do. And we're using the orange as positive here and the yellow as negative. So let's find which holes are appropriate. All right, 2 positives gonna be here. Orange slides in there nice and deep. Tighten it down. Good. Yellow, 1 more to do. Gotta get the yellow in the hole over here. Twist it up. Make sure it's not gonna collapse when we try and slide it in. There we go. Got it in there. Tighten, 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 tighten. All right. That's awesome. That's not going anywhere. We got our coaxial cable wired. Boom. Now. There we go. Pull this up to meet it. Tighten it up. Here it is. Nice and tight. How about it, guys? We're doing it. All right. Other side, you know the drill. So I'm going to be doing this again. If you don't want to watch this, you can skip further ahead in the video. You don't have to watch me do it twice. But just in case you're doing this at home and you want to see it again, because you want to follow along, then stick right here, because we're going to wire this up all over again, just like we did the last one. So let's find here. That's going to be 1 positive. Here we go. Look at that. Red in there. Tighten it down. All right. Brown in there. Tighten it down. All right, 2 down, 2 to go. Let's do it. Why is this so hard to read? Orange goes in here. Tighten it down. Not going anywhere. Yellow goes in here. Twist, twist, twist. Find the hole. Feed it into the hole. Tighten down the screw. See, anybody could make their own cables. It's just easy. You get to pick your own parts too. It's kind of awesome. All right, tightened up. All right. And with this, all our cabling is done. We did it. Moving on. We did it. Here we are. These things are unbelievable. Built like cinder blocks. Fully dampened the way they're supposed to be. Fully assembled. I cannot wait to get these things into the studio, hook them up and listen to them. But you might be saying, how do you hook them up? I'm going to show you. If you remember, I talked about moving the amps external, getting them out of the cabinets and putting them into their own enclosure. I have an upcoming video that is going to show you the amp enclosure we made. That video's not ready yet. My back betrayed me. But I will be back with that video in the next couple months here.
And in that video, I will show you the amp enclosures that we are building for these speakers, and you'll be able to get them right through my Social Club store here on YouTube. So by taking these cabinets and turning them into passives, we have the SpeakOn connectors on the back, and those SpeakOn connectors are how we make the connections from the amp to the cabinets. Here's the cables we made. So since the new amp rack is not ready yet, what I did was I repurposed the old stand mount cabinets and I drilled some holes in the bottom to add SpeakOn connectors so that I could access the connections to the amp. And we make it nice and easy, the same way it would work in the amp rack. But currently, I'm just repurposing the old cabinets with no drivers in them, just using them as the amp rack. All right, so let me get this cabinet out of the way. I'll put the old stand mount cabinet here with the amp still mounted in it, and I'll show you how we use the new wires we made to hook these speakers up. Here we are. Old cabinet, amp still mounted in here. New SpeakOn connectors at the bottom. So let me show you how this works. Let me turn this bad boy around. Ugh. Now you can see on the back the SpeakOn connectors, right? Let me come around. All right, so we have these here, and it's really easy to do because if you put it in the wrong one, it won't click. For instance, if I try and put it in the one for the subwoofer, it doesn't go in all the way and won't turn. That's what we want. But when I put it in the coaxial one, watch. Done. That's it. That's how easy it is, guys. And this is why everyone's moving to SpeakOn connectors. And then you take the other one over here. That's it. It's that easy. You just snap it in. Twist, take it out. And these have the gaskets around, so they're sealed. Beautiful. Snap. Snap. And that's all there is to it. That's it. Snap 'em in, snap 'em in. Picture this next to another one in a nice box, some nice vents around. It's gonna be beautiful. You just wait and see. But in the meantime, this did the job. And like I said, this allows us to go to other amplifiers if I want. And so that's it. As you can see, wired together perfectly. If you swap this out for the new amp rack, you'll have the total vision of what we're doing here. But for now, I hope this gives you the vision of where we're going. And just to show you again how easy it is to disconnect. Twist, turn, twist, turn. And over here, twist, turn, twist, turn. Easy! So you can do this at home if you want. You can create these speakers. You can create the amp rack. You can put the amps in the speakers if you still want to. But like I said, for my own personal reasons, we're moving them out. And I'm not looking back. It made sense in the original to have it all enclosed like an active speaker, but that's not my goal here. My goal is adaptability, flexibility, being able to modify things if I want. And that's where the speaker is my favorite. It's the most customizable speaker I've had, and building it out in this new structure, bigger cabinets, moving the amps external, using the SpeakOn cables, it's fantastic. I am thrilled. Can't wait to get these things hooked up and listen. Let's go see how they sound. 83.5. That's heavy. Now I know it's everyone's favorite part, the measurements. You want to know, how did the speaker actually perform, right? Well, we're going to take a look, but I want to mention something first. This is not the way speakers are traditionally measured. Here's what I mean by that. I would argue this is a more difficult measurement. We're not measuring one speaker, 1 watt, 1 meter. That's not the goal here. I don't care if it's anechoic or in room. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing here is I'm taking these two speakers and I'm measuring them in room summed together, meaning I'm using a mono microphone at the listening position, and both the left and the right speakers are playing at the same time. And what you're seeing here is the summed response, the phase response, the frequency response, the distortion. We're going to look at all that stuff. I just want you to understand that it's not the traditional measurements that you find on a speaker when it's measured in an anechoic chamber or in room. This is slightly different because I'm measuring both at the same time. But to me, that gives me the more accurate picture of how they sound. Because if you have two speakers that are slightly misplaced and not summing properly, you're going to get all kinds of high frequency issues where a speaker moved too far in one direction, even by a small amount, will affect how the high frequency information sums. Not the high frequency coming out of the speaker, but the way they sum at the listening position. and that's important. So let's get into that, and let's take a look at these measurements. We're gonna start with the measurements from the stand mount version from the last video. So this is the measurement I had in the last video. And as you can see, it is pretty well within 1 decibel either way, except for these 2 little troughs here and the big null in the room that I was dealing with. Some of you may know, if you saw the original video, my null was at about 31 Hertz. I later did a review of the speakers separate from the build video, and in that video, I had gotten the null down to about 27 Hertz by moving the speakers further out into the room. I brought them another 2 feet into the room to get that down to 27. But I hated having that null there, and I hoped that the passive radiators were going to be able to help patch it, right? Let's look. Oh yeah, did it ever. Look at this low frequency response. We're talking within a half decibel from 100 to about 24. From 24 Hertz all the way up to 100 Hertz, you're half a decibel difference. Now, I think the F6 on this is about 21 Hertz, which I'm fine with, the in-room F6 being at. I'm fine with that. I am more concerned about how flat it plays across this region and how it stays in phase. Let's go back to the original. As you could see here, you could see the phase rotation points. This green line here is the phase. And you could see the phase rotation points where the crossovers were. 210 crossover, 1800 crossover. So you can see the phase was rotating at the crossover points before. What I was able to do with the all-pass filters is clean that phase up tremendously. Look at how this is. And again, this is the summed pair playing. This isn't one speaker playing. This is the summed pair playing together. And I'm sorry, but that is just phenomenal to have these speakers all the way in phase down here to about 120 Hertz, 140 Hertz. And the reason that this is happening here, the reason the phase is rotating, this guy, the monitor is in the way. Response is hitting it, we're getting a little wonky there, okay? Now, it's still a respectable measurement, but the phase does rotate. Keeping the phase so tight, we are staying super tight in the pocket here with this phase response. And it's what makes it sound so holographic now. It's why these things sound so amazing in the room, is because when they sum together in the listening spot, look at how tight the phase is. And I can't do much about the phase once you get down here because, as we've discussed before, the wavelengths are too long. Once you get down here, you have much less ability to adjust for phase outside of changing the timing of the speaker, because wavelengths are a finite size. It's just part of physics, and you can only do so much with them. But having all of my mid-range in phase, having all of this come across here and not having any phase rotation like I had before, my God, do they sound better. They just sound better. And this is the proof as to why. Now, let's go back and look at what the waterfall plot was for the old set. This is the stand mount one. And as you could see, with the room null down here and everything, and the DSP that had to be propped up on the low end because it was in that tight sealed box and we had to put a bunch of low end DSP in there to get it up, that caused a delay. And the delay can be seen here. Now, a lot of people said going to a passive radiator was going to blow that out so far, and it really doesn't. Look at the difference. I mean, you're not getting these poking out here. They're coming down. And as mentioned before, some of these cabinet resonances got cleaned up a little bit by adding the passives on the side and giving them a place to exit. So that's the difference there. So you have your frequency of the original going to the new version, the original going to the new version. And now we have the distortion of the original going to the new version. And as you can see, we've lowered the distortion. And we lowered the distortion a lot down here because of adding that passive radiator and not asking the subwoofer to do as much. You're not asking the sub to do as much. You're not asking the amp and DSP to make up as much. So going from the stand mount to the floor stander, I mean, it's just night and day. And again, look at how smooth that response is. So beautiful. But pushing all that distortion down super low. You know, we're talking 85 decibels is what I measured at. And we're down here talking about what, 35 decibels, you know, 55 at the highest point. We're a lot lower. You're 30 decibels down on the most noticeable distortion that you're gonna get. Everything has improved, but my favorite is really filling out this null down here because it completely changed the way these things image and everything got tighter, which I love. So I hope these measurements make sense. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'm happy to talk about it, but this is what we're talking about. This is why I love this speaker. It sounds very good. There is not a lot of extra overhang from the passive radiator. There just isn't, because it actually helps lower the distortion down here, you know? A lot. Like that was 63 and now it's maybe 50? Under 50? I mean, come on. You see why I love these things, right? It's not a riddle, you know? It's not this big question, why does he prefer the new ones? The all-pass filters have done a lot to help me with the phase and help get the frequency smooth. And going to the larger cabinets has helped immensely too. Adding the passive radiators has helped. Some of you may say, why is the monitor causing this issue here now where it didn't cause it up here? Go back and check the old videos. I had different monitors. I had the Slate Ravens, the two touchscreens that were on an angle, and that's different than this curved widescreen. And it just happens that the curved widescreen introduces a bit more phase issue because it's hitting it and rotating once it hits it and bounces off and reflects. However, I still wouldn't trade it for anything because it cleaned up the phase all the way through the crossover points. And to me, that's more important. You know, I am in a working environment here. It's different if you have nothing in front of your speakers. If you're just listening for leisure, these things are gonna be awesome and you're gonna get them super flat the whole way across. And you might even be able to keep it in phase depending on how your room's treated. I can't because this is a working studio. You know, I have equipment that needs to be here so I can do my job. And you know, that's the case. So no regrets. I have absolutely made the right choice in upgrading these things. You know, I had thought about doing a video where I just put them in the sealed boxes without the passive radiators, but the floor standing sealed boxes. And I don't think I'm gonna do it because I don't wanna bother. Like, I love the extra extension. There is no replacement for displacement. And these things displace a lot more air and it's noticeable and it sounds better. So this is it. These are the measurements. We've lowered the distortion, we've improved the waterfall plot, and the frequency and phase is a lot better across the board. So that's it. These are the measurements. I'm proud of them. I hope you enjoyed them. And if you have any questions, ask me in the comments below. You know, feel free to shoot any question you have at me. I'm happy to answer it, and hopefully I can give you the answer you're looking for, okay? I try and cover everything in these videos, but I'm sure I forgot something. I'm not sure what. So we've seen the measurements. Let's get to listening impressions. How does it actually sound? Let's move on to listening impressions and I'll let you know. Guys, I'm here. I'm finally here, sitting in the chair. The speakers are set up. I spent weeks tweaking them. I spent a month listening to them. And I gotta tell you, they're fantastic. They're so much better than they were before. And it's a twofold reason. And I'm going to get into what those two reasons are that they're so improved. But first I want to mention, at the end of April, I will be taking a field trip to Brooklyn, New York to visit Ex Machina's factory. So if you want to know how they're making those amazing studio monitors up there, if you want to peek behind the curtain to see what they're doing, I'm going to show you. Make sure you subscribe to this video so that you don't miss that video when it drops. It's been 6 years since I was at Ex Machina's old factory in Brooklyn. So I'm very excited to see the new digs. I'm excited to see the new space and check out some of the new designs that they've been working on. They've been working on smaller, more modular monitors, and I'm excited to see how they sound. So what sets the floor standers apart from the stand mount version? Well, the obvious elephant in the room is the 2 extra passive radiators and the much taller cabinet. I'm not going to rehash why that makes it better. I did that earlier in the video. You already know that. But I will tell you that the ease with which it produces very sub frequencies now, down in the 30s and 40s, the ease with which those come out, the clarity, the lack of overhang, it's a beautiful thing. I love it. Ralphie's already snoring up a storm on the couch over here. Hope I'm not boring you that quickly. But just as big of a revelation as the bass has been, a possibly even bigger one is my phase sculpting response. So before I had the crossovers and DSP set up in the way that they came from SEAS. By adding all-pass filters, I was able to shift the phase accordingly so that the speaker stays in phase through their crossover points. And that's very important for transients. That's very important for clarity. Having phase coherence at your crossover points is vital. And this does it in spades. Between the time delay, the controlled time delay for each driver, and the phase shaping from the all-pass filters, it has been absolutely phenomenal. I love it. I love how they sound. I love everything about it. So I listened to a bunch of my favorite music on it. You know, a lot of my favorite test songs that I know what to listen for. And I've made some listening impressions, so I'd like to share them with you. So you have an idea of what I'm hearing over here. Now, I mentioned I didn't want to get into doing the FIR filters due to latency. And that's still my position. When I go to Ex Machina, I'm going to talk to them about how they deal with it, because I know that they have a switch on the back of their monitors to switch between low latency and high latency. And the high latency is where I think they're using the FIR filters, and my guess would be the low latency would be all-pass filters. But I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to find out when I go see them. Well, I've said I don't want to do the FIR filters. The all-pass filters made such a giant difference that now I'm curious. Now I want to know. So if you're interested in seeing me apply FIR filters to this, let me know. They're supposed to do wonders for the phase, but the all-pass filters have already done wonders for the phase, so I'm not sure how much of an improvement it will be, and I don't know if that latency will negate the improvement, to be determined. And the newfound phase coherency has been just as big of a revelation that the expanded cabinet and passive radiators have made for the bass response. Some of the things I notice now with the upgraded phase response of the speaker is reverb tails seem to go on for longer. Echoes, I'm hearing deeper into the echo pattern. The transients are so much tighter. Everything sounds very fast. And it's amazing. I don't hear lag in these, which is ideal. And, you know, people are saying, yeah, but you had the sub before and you could go down to 20 hertz before. It's like, yeah, theoretically I could. But I was asking the DSP to add so much to fight against the spring load of that sealed box. It just sounds better now that I added the passives. There's no replacement for displacement. I know you've heard that, and if you haven't, you should. There's no replacement for displacement, meaning 110 is never going to move the same amount of air that 3 10s will move. And granted, 2 of those 10s aren't active, but they don't need to be. They're tuned to where they need to be for the response to work. And by placing the passives on the sides of the cabinets, I get 2 increases. One of the increases is that it pressurizes the room differently and helps fill out the null that I was having at 27 hertz. I want to talk about the soundstage on these things. Even before, they had a pretty big sweet spot, but the sweet spot is amazing now because the phase coherency is so tight that the frequencies don't cancel out as easily because they're arriving in time. They're not arriving slightly delayed. So a lot of that is being improved. And the soundstage is incredibly tall and wide. It absolutely extends beyond the physical speaker location. So sometimes something panned far left won't sound like it's coming directly out of the speaker. It'll sound like it's coming to the left of the left speaker, which is what you want. And so these speakers will cut down to the bone of a recording. And so if your recording that you're listening to was not properly recorded, or if there's extra noise or certain textures or stuff, that stuff is going to come through clear as day. Imperfections have no place to hide with these speakers. If you listen to music that isn't well mixed or mastered, these might not be the speakers for you. These are going to be the speakers for audiophiles who want to enjoy the recordings, or for studio engineers who need to hear exactly what the recording is and nothing extra, nothing canceled out. You need to hear exactly what was recorded, and these will show you that. You know, I came from hip hop. That's my original roots were out of hip hop. I was a Wu-Tang Clan fan. Still am a Wu-Tang Clan fan. Whoa, Wu-Tang forever.
You hear them gangsters coming. You better stop that fronting. The MOB is coming. You know we got them guns in.
You know, going back and listening through some of the old Wu-Tang stuff, the roughness is very noticeable. Bells of War, for instance. The vocal EQ is very odd in that it's very sharp around the 3-4K region and very thin down around the 2-300 region. So you're left with these like pokey, sharp kind of vocals, which in honesty was part of the appeal of early Wu-Tang. It wasn't this polished studio sounding album. It sounded raw and more like the streets. And that comes across here. There's no place for it to hide, honestly. You know, all the vocals in that song are rough around the edges, but especially RZA. His voice just pokes out at certain points and it just doesn't sound like it was compressed and EQ'd properly. But good and proper EQ isn't what they were going for, so I don't fault them for it. It still holds up for what its original intent was. But if I'm listening back to them on these, it doesn't sound good. So if you're a connoisseur of fine master recordings, this is what you're gonna want. You're gonna want the floor standard of these, and you're gonna love listening to your music on it. Because holy shit, these are fantastic. In my response, I am remarkably flat. In room, summed. Meaning when these two speakers sum together at the listening point, what is the frequency response? It's fantastic. Look. Are you kidding me? So like before, I have these set up with different presets in the amp. Preset 1 is entirely flat, all the way across. And I use that when I'm mixing and mastering because I need to hear precisely that things are in their proper location. But just like the original preset 3, the bass response is stepped up 3 decibels in preset 3. And it is more fun to listen to certain things with more bass. It's not necessarily more accurate, but it can be more fun. And these absolutely make it more fun. So enough general talk about these things. Let's get into some more music talk, like I did with the Wu-Tang thing, you know? I listened to a bunch of songs. I want to tell you how they sounded. The song Philadelphia by Meek Mill, featuring Swizz Beatz. Maybe you know this song, maybe you don't. I liked it as a test song because there's 2 different aspects about it that I like to use for testing a speaker. One is the clarity of the vocals. The clarity of the ad-libs in that song are insanely well recorded. They're not over-compressed. They sound like the person is standing in front of you. The main vocals of that song are more compressed, the way you'd expect a main vocal to sound. And these speakers did an amazing job of showing me the disparity between the two, like how much more compressed the lead vocal is over the ad-libs, because it sounded like the ad-libs had infinite headroom and it sounded like the lead vocal definitely had that compression, tamping it down a bit. But it sounds holographic. The space sounds so big in front of you and the ad-libs are panned and everything sounds amazing. And then the bass hits and that bass wallops you. It's boom, boom. It's nuts. And these passive radiators get to bumping when that bass note hits. I'll show you the video. Look. That's good. And again, that's one of those where that did not have the punch before for me in this room. Partially because the bass frequency was hitting at the null of the room frequency. And the other being that I only had 110 pushing air. Adding them on the side, having them pushing in 3 different directions, absolutely helped out. And those passives really help increase the punch. You want to feel it, right? Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight. Classic. His vocals are dead center down the middle and crystal clear. There's a slapback delay on them that you can hear very cleanly. There's not too much reverb. They just sound crisp and in front of you. The slapback gives it a bit of a depth. And his vocals mostly float over the light percussion from the drum machine and the synth in the background until those drums hit. And when those drums hit, his voice falls right back into where you'd expect it to be in the song. It doesn't sound like it's floating above it. It sounds perfectly mixed as part of it. And when I listen back here in this space, it sounds as if there's no walls in this room. It just sounds like the music goes on forever in every direction. And it doesn't sound contained. You know, maybe that's a testament to how they used to mix and master things back in the days before everything got squashed. But It's phenomenal, and it's something you should experience if you have a chance to listen to these. Smooth by Carlos Santana, featuring Rob Thomas. I love the way the Latin percussion is recorded in this song. I love the way it's mixed. Expertly mixed and mastered. Sounds beautiful. Never gets crunchy. Keeps the headroom. But pans the percussion far and wide. And it's always clear. And you'll notice bongos or congas popping out at certain points. And it just adds to the excitement and the live feel of the song. It feels more like a live performance, right? You know, and Carlos's guitar starts peeking through before the radio filter on the vocals gets lifted. And then it just starts to poke through a bit more. And when that chorus drops, everything gets peeled off and it just goes in your face. And it sounds so good. I picked up background vocals in the hook I hadn't noticed before. And that's not bullshit. Like, I've listened to this song a bunch and I've listened to it closely. But there were layers that are just masked normally, that they're buried in there, that you don't notice. But the clean transients and the in-phase response of the speaker allowed me to appreciate it. And it's wild. That phase thing helps tremendously with clarity. Another one of my favorites, One Headlight by the Wallflowers. It sounds wonderful. And one of the reasons I like using it as a test song on speakers is because I can sit dead center, close my eyes, and I hear the instruments start popping up on the soundstage. You know, you hear the guitar, you hear the bass, you hear the drums dead center, you hear the vocals dead center, you hear the organ in the right. Everything has its own little space. And it sounds like a live band. And I love listening to that song because it tells me a lot about the quality of the soundstage that I'm listening to. You guys like Depeche Mode? What about Always You off the most recent album, the Memento Mori album? This is the way I have always wanted Depeche Mode to sound. You know, one of my beefs with their music is that the albums of the 80s and 90s lacked bass. I love music for the masses. It's probably my favorite Depeche Mode album, but it is anemic on bass. I don't know what was going on there. They didn't have a sub, or the sub was turned up too loud, so they mixed everything low. I don't know. Strangelove, for instance. Give those drums some weight. Give them some heft. Well, I guess they didn't get the memo, but now they did, because Always You is phenomenal. The kick is sturdy and fat. The bass line is undulating and fat and full. You know, the snare roll that they do is dead center mono, and it's so crisp. It sounds so good. And the vocals are dead center too, but they do have some nice stereo effects on them at points. But the lead vocals are dead down the center the way you want them. But there are these haunting background vocals that are kind of panned left to right, and you know, they have a big reverb tail on them, and they sound haunting, eerie. The synths are fat, the drums are crisp and clear. This to me is the way I like Depeche Mode to sound. And these speakers did not disappoint. They allowed me to appreciate it in a way that I hadn't experienced before. So I'm grateful for that. The song does have some long reverb tails on it, but they're defined and they never swirl into masking on these speakers. It's fantastic. As you guys know, I'm in Majestic Phoenix, but I'm also in a group called VHXRR with Rob Rowe. And our song, The Undertow, off our On the Shoulders of Giants EP, is a dark and deep undulating beat. It's made to sound like the undertow is pulling you down and you're sinking. I mixed and mastered the song on the King RO4Y MKIII stand mount speakers. So I know how they sound. So now I listen back to them on here. Is there any difference? The floor standards make it even better. There's just an extra level now to that deep undulating bass that the passive radiators provide. Again, no replacement for displacement. Adding them in, it sounds better. It sounds cleaner. And it just sounds more powerful all the way around. And I'm very happy with how that song performed on these speakers. I can enjoy it even more now than I did in the original. And I didn't have to change anything in the recording to do that. I still did a good job mixing and mastering it when I did it. But by taking it to speakers with a bit more engine under the hood now, I got an even better response back for it. And I know because I mixed and mastered them here in this space with the stand mount of these, and now I'm going to the floor mount. So it's an apples to apples comparison. Do you remember that song, Whoa, by Black Rob? You know, it starts off with like this looping violin, and it's dead center mono. You know, when Black Rob first comes on, he's telling you about, yo, that's whoa. It's panned slightly left. It's not directly center. When the vocals drop in for the verse, that's when he comes in dead center. And these full hip-hop drums drop in. And you have this beautifully mixed song that sounds like it came out of like the slick late 90s bad boy era where, you know, the recordings were really all top notch. Listening here, almost the whole track's in mono. The only thing that's stereo in the song are the ad-libs. The instruments, drums, and main vocals are all dead center. So the ad-libs are the only thing providing any amount of like stereo space to the song. And that showed that to me. Staying in my 90s hip-hop bag, let's take a look at Shook Ones by Mobb Deep. This is a classic song. You know, it starts off with the hi-hat that's supposed to, they took the influence of the gas stove starting. You know what that was for if you're a 90s hip-hop fan. And that's what you hear first, but then the snare hits. And the snare hits dead center, except there's reverb on the snare, but only in the right channel, which tells me something was not patched properly in the studio when they recorded that, because you should have the reverb out of both channels. The snare's coming out of both channels, but the reverb's only coming out of the right. So something was probably patched wrong in the studio that day. Because I find it hard to believe that they were like, no, just put the reverb on the right channel. That's what I want. I don't believe it. I don't buy that, but what do I know? I suck the heads off fish.
I prefer Gennaros, but what do I know? I'm a bear. I suck the heads off fish.
Gennaros.
So if I'm gonna stay reviewing 90s hip hop, I gotta touch a Dr. Dre produced track, right? But let's keep it East Coast. Let's go with when he produced The Firm. The Firm was a supergroup in 1997 that consisted of Nas, Foxy Brown, AZ, and Nature. And they kind of went with the whole mafioso thing that was so big in movies at the time. You know, Goodfellas and Casino were out, and so mafioso influence played a big role in 90s hip hop. I was DJ Luciano back then, I can tell you firsthand. And Firm Biz is a interpolation, a recreation of Square Biz, but with Dre doing the sampling and the drums. And I have to tell you, like most Dr. Dre productions, it sounds like $1 million. That song even has slightly different EQ and reverb than the rest of the album. It just has a different feel to it. It feels bigger and more produced and slightly more polished than the rest of the album. It's not to detract from the rest of the album. The rest of the album's still great. But that song has such a slick polish to it that I like to use it as a review song. Again here, this is a hip hop thing. Drums, bass, vocals, dead down the center. Rock does that a lot too, but hip hop especially. The piano and brass in the song are very stereo, to the point that they're almost hard pan left and right, so that it leaves the center clear for your drums, bass, and vocals. You're not trying to put everything over everything. It's a good mixing trick to take, you know, certain instruments that aren't the focal point, but are very good accents and pan them left and right so that you leave that center open and the whole song doesn't get clogged up, but they're still adding plenty. And even when they sum to mono, they sound nice. It's a pro production move. Overall, the track is a bit bright, but like I said, it goes to what they were going for on that song, and they nailed it. Shout to Dr. Dre. Legend. And if I'm going to a speaker with 3 10-inch drivers in them, you know, whether they're passive radiators or active, I gotta test some bass songs, right? So I went to Techmaster PEB. I listened to Robot Love, and I like Robot Love because it is pretty much like scaled 808s. So it's like, and then it drops into typical Techmaster PEB music with like these beautiful synths and these kind of like drum loops on top. But the star of the show is always the 808s, the tuned sine waves. And since I have this room dialed in so well to where all of my bass notes are within a half decibel to a decibel of each other throughout the bass frequency band, I am able to hear all of these notes beautifully. None of them are poking out in a way that they shouldn't be. None of them vanish or go hidden. It was well mixed when they did it, but you need good speakers in a good room to be able to appreciate it. Because if your room is untreated, or if your speakers are too close to your wall, or you're dealing with nulls, the bass response is going to be very uneven. It's always the hardest part to get right in any room is the bass response. And so going to this song, going to the It Came From Outer Bass 2 album, and going through it and listening, man, I can't go back. I can't go back. I don't want to go back to the stand mounts. This is it for me. I'm good. I'm good. And the 3-way design really shines on Techmaster PEB music because the coaxial, the midrange, and the tweet are free to handle all like the you know, percussion and the synths, and they sound lovely without getting distorted at all by asking them to reproduce the enormous subnotes. These speakers are well equipped to listen to that style of music. I had to touch on a Tribe Called Quest. Steve Biko, Stir It Up, off the Midnight Marauders album. You know it? I love Bob Power. Classic engineer. Really helped shape the way of 90s hip hop. You know, he came to it with a certain respect. He didn't look at it as like a disrespectful form of music like some rock guys did. He came to it with ideas, and I love that. Rest in peace to Bob Power. But listening back to Tribe's albums, The Low End Theory and Midnight Marauders, I've always felt that the vocals could have used a little different EQing. They should have been a little brighter and a little less heavy down around 200, especially Q-Tip. Phife Dawg, it's not as noticeable on, but Q-Tip with his deeper voice and softer kind of delivery, it's definitely more noticeable. And that comes through here. You know, I don't fault Bob for anything on those early albums, but I think that that's really what was missing for me on those first few Tribe albums, was like the vocal EQing was just a little bit off. The music EQing was always beautiful. The samples sounded good, the drums sounded good, but the vocals could have been a little clearer. And finally, I have one more song I want to talk about here, and it's Tom Jones' I, Who Have Nothing. This is a song I remember hearing as a kid. My mom is an enormous Tom Jones fan. You know, I got her a front row seat to go see him last year. So Tom Jones is still out there touring. My mom's still out there watching him. But she was my introduction to Tom Jones. She showed me his music. And, you know, while not a fan of What's Up Pussycat, I am a fan of I Who Have Nothing. I'm a fan of the power of the song. I'm a fan of the recording and the engineering. I'm a fan of the performances. I want to talk about it just a little bit. I don't know who the band was. I don't know who played on it, but they killed it. Absolutely killed it. Drums, bass, strings, keys, brass, all of them sound amazing. All of them beautifully recorded, mixed, panned, mastered. I love it. It's a really fantastic recording of a song with a lot of power. So if you really want to feel that emotion, sit down in front of them, close your eyes, and crank it up. And strap in, because it's a wild ride. The swells of the strings stir the emotion in such a beautiful way. And his voice belts out that ending so beautifully. Go give that song a listen. If you haven't heard that song in a while, go back and listen to it, because it's one of those songs that, you know, I'm not always the biggest fan of recordings from the 1970s. I liked more how music sounded in the 80s and 90s than the 70s. I thought in the 70s a lot of drums just sounded like construction paper. And it was recording techniques and the technology used at the time. But this is just a beautiful recording all the way around. And, you know, it deserves your attention. So go give it some. And so that's all I want to talk about when it comes to my listening impressions. Overall impressions are, if you have the means, if you have the money and the way to get these things built out for you, do it. The floor standers are better than the stand mounts. I don't think that should come as a surprise. You know, even people that don't like passives will at least admit that going to the larger cabinet for the sub helps. These things sound fantastic, and I love them. I'm not getting rid of these things. You're gonna have to pry them out of my cold, dead hands. God forbid that day comes anytime soon, but I'm keeping these things until I'm gone. And so that's my verdict. These things are good. They sound good. The phase improved thanks to my adjustments with the all-pass filters. The bass improved thanks to taking the strain off of the DSP and allowing the passive radiators to relieve the pressure on the box and improve the low end and add extra air punch into the room, which is what I'm looking for. I like feeling the music too, and these help me feel it a lot easier. So I want to thank you for coming along today. I want to invite you to join and become a member of the Social Club here on YouTube. You can join. I have 2 different levels of membership at the moment. I'm happy to have you as a member of either category. Come join. Let's talk. Let's talk about audio. I'm very excited. I'm excited to take a trip up to Ex Machina next month, tour their new studio, make a very cool video for you guys to come see. And members will have access to a little behind the scenes content from Ex Machina. So if you want the behind the scenes stuff, sign up for a membership. It's not too bad. Don't forget to check out Majestic Phoenix and VHXRR, my 2 groups that I have. Don't forget to check out Von Hertzog's personal music, which I have up there on Spotify and YouTube. I don't promote my own stuff all that much. I prefer being in a group with either Rob or Aaron and, you know, promoting that more so than my own stuff. But I am going to be releasing David's Crate Part 2 this coming spring, so stay tuned. Which David's Crate Part 1 was trip hop style, where I had vocalists come in and sing on top of my trip hop style beats. Volume 2, Part 2, is going to be hip hop artists on top. And some of the hip hop recordings are over 20 years old that I recorded back in Philly back in the day, or I recorded in New York when I was working at the studio up there. And I have taken them and put them over new beats for my David's Crate project. So I'm excited for that too. The Inclined Fidelity website is changing. We've switched to offering kits now instead of offering pre-built speakers because, as I told you earlier, my back has betrayed me. My body doesn't want to do it anymore. But I love these speakers. I love the designs that I've come up with, and I think the world should still have them. So just because I don't want to manufacture them anymore doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to enjoy them. So if you want to build them yourself, you now have that option. I do enjoy making videos here. So if you enjoy seeing this content, either speaker content or studio content, please become a member. It helps out. Like and subscribe. Share this video with your friends. Like, subscribe, comment. It all helps the channel. I hate asking for it all the time because I don't want to be annoying. But I do have to mention it at least once or twice because this video is 2 hours long. I hope you made it to the end. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm sorry that it took so long for it to make. I'm sorry that it took so long to watch, but I hope that you got a lot out of it. I hope that you fully understand the difference now between the stand mount and the floor standing version of these speakers. And if you have any other questions, hit me up. I'm always here. I'm around. You can catch me here on YouTube. You can catch me on Instagram. And if you're a member of the social club, you can catch me in the Discord. So reach out, ask me whatever questions you got. Tell me what videos you'd like to see in the future. You know, I'm always looking for content ideas. And until next time, this has been Von Hertzog from the Social Club.